Fishy scum!
I'm in Falkirk, not far from Glasgow, where these protests have become an almost weekly occurrence.
Absolutely disgusting! Coming to stand up for illegal immigrants in our town! You're not even welcome here!
Over here, you've got demonstrators who want to stop to all migration. And then on this side of the road, the counter-protesters.
Refugees are welcome here!
Were standing up to support refugees because in that hotel, there are asylum seekers who've been put there by the Scottish government.
Say it loud! Say it clear!
This kind of division is new for Scotland. A country that has long prided itself as a welcoming place for refugees. But the anti-immigration mood that's been seen in England is now spreading north.
Fuck off! Pass off!
And housing has become a flashpoint.
The SNP have chosen to put people who come here illegally to the top of the housing list, above that of families in Glasgow and elsewhere who have worked and lived and paid into the system for generations.
Now, with just weeks until Scottish elections, polls show support for the anti-immigration party Reform UK is on the rise.
Send them back on the boat they came from!
On the other side, many Glaswegians blame the government's housing policies.
We've had a housing crisis in Scotland for years and years and years, way before asylum seekers came here. If I could speak to Nigel Farage, it would be take your hate, take your racism out of Scotland.
These saltire flags, once a symbol of Scottish pride, have now become a sign of people's frustration over the city's approach to immigration.
The further out from the city centre you go, the more flags you see, and it's become a bit of a game of cat and mouse. The council takes them down, but then the next day, someone puts them back up again.
In the outer working-class suburbs of Glasgow, many are angry. Unable to keep pace with the cost of living and struggling to secure housing, many lay the blame on an increase in immigration.
Hello. Hi, I'm Michelle.
Oh, nice to meet you. Who's
This is Kyla.
Michelle is a single mum with 3 kids, aged 19, 12 and 7.
This is Devin and Daria.
Hey guys, how you going?
Say hello, Daria. Hi, Daria. Say hello.
Her youngest, Daria, has complex needs.
Hello. Hello.
They've been in and out of multiple council flats and temporary accommodation.
That's 3 years now. The 3 houses in 3 years they've moved us to.
3 houses in 3
flats.
years.
The first flat they moved us to was upstairs with no window locks. We had a dead rat. We had cat's poo behind the washing machine. There was controlled drugs under my child's bed. They hadn't cleaned the flat. Well, the house was like horrendous.
Former healthcare worker Michelle and her family found themselves facing homelessness after the private let they were living in was repossessed. They were first moved to a hotel, then 2 flats, before landing here.
The kids aren't having a normal life at all. They're not being able to make friends. Daria's not able to get her services. Every day I'm walking on eggshells every day. Because I keep on thinking, what happens if she gets her hands on something? What happens if she gets out the window? Or what happens if she burns herself? There's loads of things, especially in the last flat that we were in Castlemilk. There was a boiler in her bedroom. And it had no door on it, and she was biting the wires and things like that. So this is my bedroom. Devin and Daria share that bed.
You all share the one bed?
All share the one bed. My 19-year-old's in the single room.
Does anyone get a good sleep, 3 of you in the one bed?
No, Daria's double incontinent, so at times we'll wake up and we'll be peed on and things like that. I will get punched during the night, we'll get bitten. go. We can add some a bit.
Record numbers of households are living in temporary accommodation across Scotland, including more than 10,000 children. That's the highest number ever. Pressure on Glasgow has become so intense that late last year the council declared they had essentially run out of temporary accommodation.
Glasgow has a huge housing crisis, everyone agrees. Do you think that migration, the number of refugees coming here, is part of the problem?
Yes, definitely. I think there's just been too many coming into the country. So it's hard because you think I've worked all my days in this country, 3 jobs, paid my taxes, and my life's been made hell. You know, my health's been affected, my children's health's been affected.
A lot of people have said that they're afraid to say anything about this because they're worried about being labelled racist. Does that worry you?
Well, no, because my daughter's half Turkish, so would that mean I'm being racist towards my child then? It's want her to get a property that's suitable for her.
Since 1999, Glasgow has proudly been what's known as a dispersal city, a place where asylum seekers are welcomed. This was set up to ease the burden on big English cities like London. The UK government funds Glasgow Council to support and house new arrivals, but this has come at a cost. Glasgow supports more asylum seekers than anywhere else in the UK, currently around 3,800. Last year, the council requested a pause on new arrivals being sent to the city. They say they're in a housing emergency with no homes for the homeless. This strain on the city's resources is changing the political landscape.
Leaflet at all, just the Scottish elections are coming up. We're asking people to consider voting for change this time because the current governments are letting us down left, right and centre.
Scotland will head to the polls in May to elect a new parliament.
If you don't, this is what we're going to get more of, broken Scotland.
The Scottish National Party remains the front runner and advocates for a humane, needs-based immigration system. Labor has been steadily reducing overall net migration, pledging a firm but fair approach. Reform is polling just behind Labor, once unthinkable for the hard right in Scotland.
Listen, the only way to get change is...
Just see past him.
He's not in Scotland, he's stood in Westminster.
Audrey Dempsey embodies Glasgow's shifting political mood. A former Labor councillor, in August last year, she joined Nigel Farage's party.
What made you decide to join Reform?
It became apparent very early on that Reform were not afraid of difficult conversations, and a lot of what they were saying aligned with where my head was at. They acknowledged the fact that the strain on, resources and public services and things due to immigration is becoming a real hindrance for the country.
Housing and immigration are the key election battlegrounds. Both the SNP and Labor have pledged to build more affordable homes. Reform is taking a different approach, prioritising Scottish people on housing lists and removing Glasgow's dispersal city status.
Everyone agrees there's a housing crisis in Glasgow. What would Reform do differently to fix it?
Well, for a start, Reform have declared that they would deport people who have come here illegally, and that in an instant would alleviate the pressures.
It's not illegal to claim asylum in the UK, which raises questions about the legal and financial practicality of Reform's immigration plans.
Another thing is that Reform have spoke about is stopping the benefits for people who come here illegally. And without housing and without money, it takes away any incentive for people to come. The first thing I would be wanting to do is remove the dispersal city title from Glasgow, because for as long as that exists, we have coach loads from all over, from Ireland, as well, you know, coming over here to get to Glasgow because they have this mindset they have to house us.
Scotland has some of the most generous homelessness laws in the world, and Glasgow Council has a legal responsibility to provide accommodation to anyone who is homeless. This includes an increasing number of asylum seekers granted refugee status.
Are refugees at all being scapegoated for this situation? I mean, the government could have built more houses years ago. Is this entirely the fault of refugees and asylum seekers?
Do you know what? Personally, I don't blame the refugees or the asylum seekers at all. I blame the government, full stop.
Audrey was suspended from the Labor Party in 2024 after raising the issue of white children and teachers in Glasgow being the subject of racially motivated attacks. She was accused of racism herself, which she rejects, and insists her feelings on immigration have nothing to do with race.
Do you think race has anything to do with it?
I don't. I think it's a numbers game. I think it is definitely a numbers game. This migration thing, had these people come from France, had they come from Australia, had they come from America, in the numbers that they have and the way that they have, I think it would still be an issue. It would be just as big an issue. But people tend to tie the race thing in.
Reform thinks Scotland is ready to embrace them. At a meeting in Falkirk, nearly every issue is linked to immigration.
38,000 migrants have arrived in Britain illegally this year alone, if not more. That means we, you, me, everyone who pays tax will be paying for these people.
We spot a familiar face. This is Audrey's first big reform event.
How do you think Scotland is going to take to Nigel Farage? Because he has been a polarising figure up here for many, many years. Do you think that's changed?
Yeah, definitely. I think Scottish people are anything but fools. You know, us Scots like to think we've got it sussed, and I think they're warming to him now because they're actually seeing the real Farage and they're seeing what his aims and objectives are, and it's for the greater good of Scotland.
Not far away, there are still many Glaswegians working hard to welcome refugees. I've come to one of a number of groups across the city opening their doors.
Hi Ben.
G'day, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Welcome, let me show you around.
Thanks for having us. Forgive my ignorance, what does refugee actually mean?
So refugee is a blend of the word refugee and the word weegee, which is a colloquial term for a Glaswegian person.
So you're turning refugees into weegees. I've said that right, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
like I wanted to make sure that when people arrive here, we are immediately making clear that they're embraced, that they're one of us. And I think there's so much negativity attached sometimes to terms like refugee, like asylum seeker. I wanted to create a term that showed respect and welcome and kindness.
Food recommendations are pizza, sausage rolls and hummus.
Selena and her volunteers also organise welcome packs for new arrivals.
What sort of stuff's going in these bags?
So the welcome packs have 3 different types of item. They have essentials, they have Scottish items, and then they have the letter. So toiletries, hats, gloves, scarves, all year in Scotland. Toothbrush and toothpaste, because the Scottish items are always massively unhealthy with iron brew and shortbread. Razors for men and period products for women.
And can you show us the letters?
Yeah, of course.
Who's making these?
So letters come from everywhere. We get them from adults and children, lots of school projects. So I think this one is probably from a school. As long as they're kind, then they're accepted. That they say things like, "Hello friend, I hope you had a safe journey to Glasgow. I think you'll love it here in Glasgow. There are lots of good food here, like Tunnock's tea cake and iron brew."
So give us an idea, how many people will you be helping here today?
Today we'll probably see about 300 to 400 visitors in the space. We definitely have only ever seen demand for our services increase. The housing crisis in Scotland at the moment has changed everything and has made it really, really difficult for people.
Social housing has failed to keep pace with need, and people living in hotel rooms often have difficulty moving on due to high rents and lack of council housing. Housing is a problem in Glasgow, but do you feel that refugees, asylum seekers are being scapegoated now?
I think absolutely we see scapegoating of the refugee community all the time. We see it used as a political pawn. What we also see are vast empty spaces. We've got 2 huge hotels on the Clyde side, empty, not in use, and people sleeping on the street. What we need is radical rethinking of a really, really broken system.
Across Glasgow, there are several thousand asylum seekers, as well as those already granted protection status, living in temporary accommodation. Many live in what have become known as asylum seeker hotels. Some can live here for up to 6 months at a time. Authorities here don't allow any filming inside these hotels, and many of the refugees living in them are afraid of speaking out, worried that they'll get kicked out if they do. Well, we've found one young man who is willing to talk to us, but he's asked that we protect his identity.
بعد از تصرف طالبان و این گروه دهشت که در افغانستان آمد من خودم قبلا نظامی بودم و ناچار بودم که باید از کشور برایم. من از افغانستان حرکت کردم به طرف انگلند که همیشه به قاچاق آمدیم. 14 جنوری کشتی ما غرق شد که به تعداد 4 نفر در کشتی کشته هم شد و ما خوشبختانه زنده رسیدیم این طرف.
Do you remember how you felt when you first arrived in the UK?
ما احساس خوشی داشتیم، مگرچه که تقریبا ما یک شوک عصبی دیده بودیم. بعد از اینکه فهمیدیم به یوکی هستیم احساس خوشی داشتیم، احساس آرامش داشتیم، به خاطر هم که داشتیم که ما زندگی ما را باور داشتیم که اینجا سیف می باشه.
You hear some Scottish people saying that refugees and asylum seekers are living in luxury hotels. Do you feel like you're living in luxury?
ما امکانات هتل که میبینیم فقط به یک جای خواب است. زندگی لاکچری به این نمیشه که یک تخت خواب باشه و در یک اتاق در آب بسته. هیچ زندگی لاکچری گفته نمیشه. بریتانیا و از دولت گلاسگو تشکری میکنم بابت فراهم ساختن همین هتل برای من. اگرچه که در زمینی فقط در این مدت زمانی که خانم آمده با ما مشکلاتی که پیش آمده به خاطر آشپزی است و همین شستن لباس و یک فراهم به یک فامیل نیست، یک اتاق که باید باشه اتاق.
You've seen those protests happening outside hotels like this one. Do they concern you?
دقیقاً برای من نگرانی ایجاد میکنه. البته که مهاجرت چیزی نیست، کسی که دلخواه بخواه به یک کشور سفر کنه مهاجر خدا بسازه. ما دیگه نگران کننده است، نه تنها به خودم و به فامیلای ما و به اشخاصی که میخواین در ایران مهاجرت پاوانن.
Glasgow has a long history of opening its doors to refugees. But this city, known for its hospitality, is facing a housing crisis. For some, that has created tension. But for others, Glasgow has offered safety, stability, and a new beginning. In 2022, at 19, Sofiia left eastern Ukraine with her 12-year-old brother Dima to escape the war.
The hardest thing to come, it was that you leave your home.
I just felt like kind of depression or fully messed up, and I didn't know from what to start. I was thinking every time about my parents at home, how they will manage because they have attack every day, and still they have every day, and and just the things getting worse.
How did you feel when you first landed here in Scotland?
First of all, it was strange because I never had a flight before, because it was the first time when I used a flight in my life. We had like really long, difficult trip, and I was like, okay, I just landed. I want to relax what I'm gonna have next, and there was my sponsor who already was waiting for us.
How long do you think it'll take to get there?
I think around 25-30 minutes, because we are with a car and, you know, people work.
Sofiia and her brother came to Glasgow through the Homes for Ukraine scheme, which links Ukrainian refugees with British sponsors offering a place to stay. Nearly 160,000 Ukrainians have arrived under the program. It's been almost a year since Sofiia and her brother moved out into their own apartment. Today, she's heading back to visit the family who welcomed her to Scotland.
What did you think of the Scottish food?
Haggis? I tried haggis. I tried in good restaurants and cafes you can try like fish and chips.
Did you try the deep fried pizza? They're kind of famous for that here.
Hello. Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you again.
G'day, how are you? I'm Ben. Nice to meet you. G'day, Robbie. Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Ben. Pleased to see you.
Thank you very much for having us.
We've got some pictures for you, so you can take them away.
Remember this one, Sophia? You sent me that.
Oh, yeah.
It's when they were travelling here.
Yeah.
Dima fell asleep on the case in the airport.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah.
These were we were preparing Sofiia to go to university, and this is Glasgow University. We thought we'd try and parent them, but only in a gentle sort of way.
Okay, so I'm sort of seeing what role you guys had to play here to get things to work for these guys. Oh, that's wonderful.
There we go. Got some blueberry cakes and Irish.
Guys, why did you decide to take in Sofiia and her brother?
Well, we saw all the terrible photographs on the television, and we just felt so sad for all these poor people escaping the terrible forces of Russia.
A lot of people would have seen those pictures and thought that's a terrible situation, but might not have made the jump towards thinking, I'm going to clear out the granny flat and make room for someone who I don't know to come and live with me for sort of an indefinite period of time. Were there any concerns you had at all about doing this?
Not really.
No, I think
we just got on with it, didn't we?
the British disposition is they're a friendly nation, and Britain has always been helping out people for hundreds of years.
At that time, it felt like Scotland and the whole UK was so welcoming, everyone wanting to do their bit. Do you feel things have changed at all?
Yeah, there's a bit of resentment, I think, because they've taken over some of the council houses that, Scottish people wanted and have been on lists for years.
Do you think people see asylum seekers or refugees differently in Scotland, in Glasgow, from people from Ukraine versus people from Afghanistan, Libya, Sudan, wherever it may be?
Syria.
Do you think people see that differently?
Oh, absolutely. These were a nation under threat of injury or death, whereas the others mostly, some of it might be climatic or war, civil war, or it might just be economic migrants coming across. I think there's a growing intolerance for how many people can come. It's different completely to Sofia's position. It's a different issue.
How is it a different issue, do you think?
They came over more organised, didn't they? They're not.
Yeah, we were not rescuing, that's a bad word too, but we were trying to save these people from a tyrant. And that was our culture and our nature, and that's what we did.
It's a different way though. We took them into a family where, say, like Afghanistan's have probably been put in hotels, and so they're sort of isolated, really, aren't they?
They're prevented from working. They can't take work on until they've been given residency.
So you could have worked, couldn't you? You were given a permission to work.
But is it's sort of a catch-22 then, that, you know, you want people to integrate, but how can they integrate if they're being kept away from the community, I guess?
Yes, it's taken so long to process these people. Yeah, that's half the problem.
Glasgow once prided itself on its open-door spirit. Now a housing crisis and rising anti-immigrant sentiment are reshaping how newcomers are seen.
At the moment, you can become a British citizen after 6 years. We need to change that.
But we're getting called racist, everything else. It's about wanting priority for our needs and putting our people first. Our people are suffering.
We don't tackle it by standing arguing on the street. We don't tackle it by getting into the comments section and falling out with everybody and mudslinging and name-calling. We tackle it in our communities.
While many refugees and asylum seekers remain in limbo, faced with an uncertain future, Glasgow is left grappling with a question it never expected to face: how to keep welcoming people in a city that's running out of room.